Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 1 and 0 podcast. I'm Avery Hill.
I'm Lyle Allenstein.
I'm Will Horseman.
Obviously, you're hearing a new voice today, so welcome, Will. Will will be joining our football beat for the 2025 year. You have the draft coming up on Thursday and the blue-white game on Saturday. So, guys, I want to ask you, what do you think Abdul Carter's floor and ceiling is for the NFL draft?
I think his ceiling is number one to the Tennessee Titans because, he's probably the best overall prospect in this draft. And Tennessee, they've got a lot of holes, and just going best player available is never a bad option. But the Titans and Browns could take quarterbacks, and which could knock them down to either 3 or 4 with down to the Patriots at 4. But I don't see the Patriots passing up on Carter if he's available. So I think his floor is number 4.
Yeah, I don't really think he goes outside the top 4 picks. Obviously, entering the draft, it was reported that he wasn't even planning on taking any visits outside of the top 4. So I don't really think he's going to go to the Titans. I think they'll go Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. But then you look at those picks 2 through 4, and he can go to any of those. I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns also, like you said, pass and went quarterback. But then you could pair him up with Myles Garrett, and that obviously just inked a contract this offseason, and that can just kind of solidify the defensive line for the foreseeable future. But I think he goes 3 or 4 to the Giants or the Patriots. Those are best player available. I don't think the pick for the Giants really makes sense considering the defensive line
I agree. I completely agree.
We're looking at this like we've got the Giants and the Patriots fans right here. But I think the pick doesn't make sense. That being said, knowing the Giants front office, I think that's going to be the pick.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, looking at the beginning of the draft cycle, especially with Abdul Carter, and his various Twitter posts of, I'm the number 1 overall pick. In 51 days, I'll be the number 1 overall pick. And, you see how the board's sliding. And, outside of, I would say, the Titans, because I feel like right now the consensus is Cam Ward, there's a lot of potential for Abdul Carter to make a lot of, obviously he's going to make a lot of money, but obviously, with the rookie scale and everything, you could see him going number 2. You could see him going number 3. Again, best case scenario for Abdul Carter is him landing number 4 to the Patriots. Playing under Mike Vrabel, obviously that would be the best fit. I do not personally want to see him paired up with Myles Garrett. I just don't think that's fair. You can't, you can't really, how do you game plan against that? As when you're pass blocking scheme, do you try to put all the help on Myles Garrett and then Abdul's on the other side, just giving other tackle work? I don't even know how you game plan against that. But looking at the rest of the draft, obviously the other guy who will likely go in the first round is Tyler Warren. Do you guys think there's anybody else that could end up going first round, or do you think it's just them two locked in?
I think KJ, Kevin Winston Jr., I wouldn't be surprised if you see one of those late first round, him become one of those late first round picks with already Super Bowl kind of contender teams. I think I talked earlier about Eagles and Commanders being 2 fits, teams that both need a depth safety kind of guy. But KJ proved last year, obviously, sidelined this year, the injury, that he's more than capable of physically being ready for the NFL, which is when we talked to him during Pro Day and when I talked to him in the locker room in the Fiesta Bowl. How that was kind of part of the reason he felt like he was ready for the NFL draft, because he physically felt ready. He thinks he still compete at the level, but the growth this year, for him being sidelined, was from a leadership perspective. And obviously, you can't really play when you're hurt with an ACL injury, so that gave him an opportunity to kind of lead from the sideline. You saw him again after the loss to Ohio State. He immediately ran over to Jalen Reed, started talking to him, and then you saw him when the Penn State lost to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. He was the first. He booked it from the sideline, first person to console Drew. So I wouldn't be surprised. He's a mature player. He's physically ready. He didn't miss a tackle his sophomore year. You see NFL guys missing tackles all the time. That's kind of hard to come by for a prospect. So I think he's the only really one that I could see sneaking in the first round. Obviously, Abdul and Tyler Warren are pretty safe to go top 10.
Like you said, Kevin Winston's a great leader, even though he went down with that ACL injury during the practice week leading up to Bowling Green. He still was a very significant contributor from the sidelines for Penn State throughout the season. And the ACL tear, I could understand why NFL teams might be afraid to pass up on to draft him, but with this 4.5 40 from Pro Day, I think that kind of alleviates any sort of concerns.
Yeah, he ran exceptionally good for his injury status. I know he's talked about he probably won't be ready until training camp, which one takes a lot of guts to run the 40. I'm not running the 40 after I tore my ACL, especially knowing that like my draft stock is like.
I don't know. We saw your 40 though at Big Ten Championship. I know you're not off an ACL injury, but that was pretty fast.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't clock it. Indie people, I don't know where your laser is. I was looking for the guide so they can time me, but I am pretty sure I ran like a 3.840, and that's 2 years removed from football. Like, I know I'm him, so why not just give me the chance? I'm just saying, but get a little sidetracked. I mean, yeah, I just think he really helped his stock with running, and not just showed his progress, but his toughness to push through, things like that. Like, obviously, he said he might end up, actually working out for teams in his little visits. I'm not sure specifically if he's done that, but yeah. But I think overall, like, looking at the whole draft room, what's interesting to me is kind of looking at this year versus previous years, because it's like this year you don't have that much guys that are certified guys that, one, are going to get drafted, two are going to get drafted high, but you have like so much top end talent like Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter. Like, just do you really need more? Like, if Kevin Winston didn't get hurt, he was probably a solidified first round pick. That was where he was mocked for the most part. And this is also interesting because it's coming off of a year where Penn State went as far as, to his furthest point. So, I mean, I think it's interesting to see how the rest of the board shakes out. You have Jalen Reed, you have Kobe King. But do you guys think anyone that is on that bottom part of the draft, are they deserving of more attention, should get drafted and won't get drafted? Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
You mentioned, obviously, Kobe King and Jalen Reed. I think those are both middle-round picks. I would not be surprised if Jalen Reed shoots up to round 3, maybe early round 4. Because you looked at his numbers this past year. I know you talk about this all the time, how he thinks he's one of the more underrated safeties and he thinks he's nationally not getting the attention he deserves. Well, at Indy, he talked about how he thinks he's starting to get a little more of that attention based on the conversations he had. But you look at his numbers, and you compare him to Caleb Downs and Malachi Starks, and Malachi Starks is one of the top safeties entering this draft with Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, and I'm totally blanking on the guy's name from South Carolina. But like they had Jalen Reed had comparable, but Jalen Reed had comparable numbers to all of them. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if he shoots up that board, especially if you see those safeties going off pretty early or like late first round, stuff like that. But other than that, I think Jalen Kimber is going to get drafted. I think prior to how he tested at Pro Day, that I thought he was going to be a 6th, 7th round pick. But I just think his Pro Day performance solidified that. Running 4.39 40-yard dashes, which he said when he talked to the NFL representatives, that was kind of the 40 was what they were looking for. And his other testing numbers were pretty comparable to the guys that went to Indianapolis. I know he was heated, he wasn't at Indy, and I talked to him, and he kind of proved it. He was like, the quote he said was, "I was pissed." And I think he made himself some money. That was my biggest takeaway from Pro Day, especially because we didn't see Abdul and Tyler test. I think everyone was kind of looking at Jalen Kimber, and I would not be surprised if he was a late round pick.
Yeah, I think Jalen Kimber's case is actually interesting because even like taking away, the 40, just kind of like you said, like to me he came out as this like cerebral guy, veteran guy. Like he's won a championship with Georgia. He's played with 5 years of college football. Like he has tons of experience, but the numbers weren't there because he was in a defense where everything was just locked up. Like he was doing his job. It's not like like either Abdul Carter's in the backfield, Jalen Reed's picking it off, like Zakee Wheatley's picking it. Like there is so much going on, and the defense obviously was one of the best, if not the best defense in the country. Like obviously up there, Ohio State and teams like that. Like he just did his job week after week, which is a positive. It's not a negative. Like, and there's some guys that are honestly just that dominant to where you're not going to see the numbers because they don't get thrown at. Like, I don't know what his numbers were looking like, but you really don't see much action at Jalen Kimber. Like, it's kind of the same as, like, even with, like, A.J. Harris, like, obviously the more he started locking things down, like, teams weren't throwing to him. Going back to Joey Porter, like, his final season, like, everyone's kind of looking for this huge season to make him a bona fide first-round pick, and they're like, he's not getting production. Well, everything's locked up. There's, like, nothing for him to do. And, like, it worked out for him ultimately for Joey Porter, obviously, going to the Steelers. It was honestly perfect. But, yeah, I think his case is very interesting, and I think his veteran experience and just him being that cerebral guy is kind of something that is going to help his stock if he, ends up getting drafted, whether 6th round, 7th round, or even just as an early undrafted free agent signing.
Yeah. I also think another guy that I think is going to get drafted is Sal Wormley, just based off of the same kind of veteran presence. He started the last 3 years at right guard. Obviously, 6-year guy. But, he was at the West Shrine Bowl. And I know that's kind of, limited reps because there's so many guys that are invited. But, in his 1 or 2 series, whatever, he had cleared a hole off a pole for a big run. And this is a guy who he's well respected. And he's an easy guy to get along with in the locker room. You just talking from him. I don't want to call him not a serious guy, but he's one of the.
It's not a stretch.
Yeah, he's always smiling. He's easy to get along with, but he's well respected. When you're starting 3 years for Penn State at an offensive line at right guard, especially the turnaround with this room and how revamped it's been, and he's been the one kind of anchoring it down. You look at all the turnover with who's the guys coming in and out of the NFL between Olu, Caden Wallace, Hunter Norzad, Juice Scruggs. Sal was the one holding it down 3 years. I think actually you're kind of benefited him. I don't really think he could have made a case for the draft last year, and you could make the argument going undrafted this year is probably a possibility. But I think he's going to be, if he doesn't get picked, I think that's an easy undrafted free agent signing, which almost might benefit him, You let the agent kind of help control your landing spot, and I think that might help him. I would not be surprised if we saw him on a training camp come fall.
Yeah, I think, just as you said, it's not always about getting drafted because you've seen so many situations where undrafted guys just went to perfect spots. I remember, as a Patriots fan, watching J.C. Jackson go undrafted. We're like, how does this guy go undrafted? And obviously, in hindsight, you see how his career shaped out. He got his money, then kind of disappeared.
Yeah, he's gone now.
But he was a premier player for a while, and obviously he had slipped because of character concerns, things like that. But the chance to pick his team, the chance to be okay, I'm going to go to the Patriots, who at the time was a premier program. Bill Belichick wasn't, lost. So, I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. So I think, it'll be very interesting to see not just what the drafted guys, but the undrafted guys. I mean, even looking at last year, Curtis Jacobs, I think he ended up in a good situation. Obviously, it didn't work out. He's kind of moving around. But I did think the chance to be in the Kansas City room was beneficial for him. The Patriots, not so much. But, I mean, he's still in the NFL roster. I cannot remember who claimed him. But, no, I can't remember.
Titans, maybe?
Yeah, I think, Titans. Yeah, so the Titans claimed him. So we'll see how that shapes out. But I kind of want to shift to the blue-white game. Obviously, you have that Saturday. With this year, I know James Franklin's kind of talked about no halftime, probably be a shorter game. He was saying that the scene in the tailgate is better than in the game, so people end up leaving by halftime, which is why there is no halftime game. It won't be on TV. So I just want to know, what are you guys expecting out of the game? Do you expect to get anything from it, from a spectator's perspective, or do you think of just another day in Beaver Stadium?
I mean, it's obviously not going to be a regular football game, so I don't know if there's too much to really take away. But I think one thing that could be interesting to watch is how the QB2 battle kind of shapes up, and because Ethan Grunkmeyer got some action late in last year with Jackson Smollett being, I don't know if I pronounced that right.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, with Jackson Smollett going down with an injury, but I think, obviously Drew Aller is no matter what happens this year, he's off to the draft next offseason. So this QB2 battle is going to be very important to watch for next season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think right now Grunkemeyer, based on what we've seen at practice in the situation last year, I'd say he has a slight edge, just because he was around. And when you see them going through drills at practice, he's usually one throwing alongside Drew, or when they all line up, he's the one going after. But when Franklin was asked about this, he said the conversation is probably going to go till fall camp, which I think is partially because they don't want Smollett to transfer. I just think Grunkemeyer's he obviously had a higher pedigree coming in as a recruit, but that's not a knock on Jackson Smollett. They got him to flip from Tulane. He was a late riser because of his injuries in high school, Elite 11 camp. So this is a great player, based on high school, but then because I wouldn't be you look at the situation and it's if Bo's still around this year, I think Smollett is gone.
Yeah.
So it's but you look behind Smollett and it's Beckham Kritza, who's got a long way to go development wise, and walk on Jack Lambert. So I think that'll be interesting. I'm also interested off of that, because we don't actually at the time of recording this have the format of how the games are going to work. how it's actually going to work, who's on what side, like team-wise. So with that, I'm interested to see what wide receivers are, with each quarterback, because other than, the proven Liam Clifford, it's like I think we're going to get a good perspective on what the wide receiver depth chart is looking like at the end of the fall, because Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross, Tyser Denmark, Caden Saunders, and Peter Gonzalez, who we saw actually was lining up with Drew, like in Drew's group at practice last week, or all the guys who we're going to throw in. I want to say throw in the top group right now, or maybe freshman Kobe Howard, who's impressed on the outside, like outside that group, that is. So I'm curious who's going to, because if you look at Caden Saunders, maybe not Caden Saunders, but if you see Clifford and the two transfers come in it, throw him with Grunkemeyer, then based on, because I think Grunkemeyer is going to be QB2, I would lean them kind of as the guys at the front of the race right now for playing time. But it's also interesting because you've got, by the time this comes out, you might have a new transfer wide receiver in that group with Trevor Pena from Syracuse, who's reportedly just took a visit Friday. So you might see some of these guys gone, by the time, because, with the portal ends, I think, the day after the spring game. So it's like you might see some of these wide receivers gone by the time this video comes out, because you're going to get a good sense of playing time, where you stack up, because now is the time to go find another team if you want to go compete for a role there.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting to me with the receivers is just how they will end up meshing. I think out of all position groups, and this is obviously no slight to the other ones, I think if anybody's going to come to play in the blue-white game, it's going to be the DBs. Like, we see them,
Agreed.
They're physical, the one-on-ones, they're talking smack, they do not play. So I think obviously you're not going to get too much out of it schematics-wise, and just knowing maybe who's starting and stuff like that. But you will be able to see how these guys compete. I mean, if you look around, the receiver room, you have some young guys, you have the transfer guys, and I think even as you mentioned with the transfer portal, if you're seeing mass exodus, which could be 2-3 receivers, then it could also be a good sign of what's to come. It could mean Penn State has guys that they can lock in, these are our guys, and we can roll with them week after week. It's not somebody's going to show up every week. No,
last year.
Yeah, you need a very set plan of guys that can execute, that can attack, that can obviously get open, which was the biggest concern of James Franklin, just the ability to get open, to find space and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think that'll be very interesting to watch with the receivers. And I just think it's very interesting because we were kind of in this same space last year when talking about the game, because it's what do we expect? You had Andy Kotelnicki coming in and we're are we going to see something from the offense? Are you going to get anything? Obviously, last year James Franklin was yeah, it's going to be a very competitive game.
But we don't even know if we're going to see live action.
Yeah,
at this
exactly.
Point, so it's
he said it was going to be a very competitive game. We're going to get starters on both sides, on both teams, things like that. Then the roster comes out, and the only ones that were on the
it was everybody but AJ Harris.
Yeah. He was on the blue team?
Yeah.
So everybody on the blue team was really nobody, not nobody, sorry, but ones that weren't going to play, and then transfers. That was really all that was. So I think it'll be very interesting. That taught me that sometimes you got to take what James Franklin says with a grain of salt. He'd even say that we're going to have live action, and there's absolutely no live action. So yeah, but is there any specific players you guys think that would be interesting to watch in the game? Anybody that you think could stand out more than fans expect?
I mean, I really am excited to watch Tyser Denmark. I think he could definitely have a breakout year, and then also Kyron Hudson in the wide receiver room, because the one practice I've watched so far, I really liked his hands so far. I think they're very soft and they can really be reliable. But if they get the Syracuse guy from the transfer, I'd be very interested to see who transfers out, because I think Caden Saunders would be pretty much automatically in the transfer, or he probably will transfer if they get the Syracuse guy.
Yeah, especially because they're both in the slot.
Yeah.
I don't really have a particular player, but I'm interested in watching the offensive line, just because they're returning 4 of 5 starters, and I don't really expect those 4 starters to play between Nick Dawkins, Vega, obviously Anthony Donko and Nolan Rucci are both hurt, and then Drew Shelton. I wouldn't be surprised if you add, depending if Drew plays quarterback, Aller, that is. I wouldn't be surprised if you throw him out there for a series. I don't really expect Drew to play, just because last year we didn't see Singleton, Katron, and Tyler Warren, so I expect the running backs not to play again. Drew. That's why I said the offensive line. We haven't even seen Deny at practice yet. I don't expect Zane to play. So I don't really think we're going to obviously see a bunch of the guys that have already solidified themselves as starters. But I'm curious to see what that who the first group is out for the offensive line with what looks like this like the better team, because I assume I don't assume that I'm assuming they're not going to be even, because they said he was even last year and they weren't. I'm curious to see where Cooper Cousins lines up, whether it's at guard or center, because I'm expecting him to play and be in the equivalent of that first team. Same with Javen Williams. I expect to see him at right tackle just because Darko and Rucci, from what we understand, aren't going to be playing just because we haven't seen him at spring ball. Same thing with TJ Shanahan. That's a guy that they've said can play. He could be a 3-spot, play both tackles, guards. He's played center back when he was at Texas A&M. And then after that, it's like you talk about the depth of the offensive line. We heard good things about Alex Birchmeier, right? And then you got freshman Owen Alcine, you've got Garrett Sexton, guys in year 2, Egan Boyer, who's they talk pretty highly of. So I'm kind of curious how they're going to, because I expect a lot of guys to be interchangeable in that place. Obviously, no JB Nelson, obviously, he's in the portal now. He's got a couple of visits lined up. But, he essentially, we assume he left because that starting job wasn't going to be handed to him. You knew he was going to play, but obviously that's a very capable starter. So I'm kind of intrigued to see the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think defensively, now that I think about it, one, of course, you have the D-line, kind of just seeing who's going to replace, Devontae Thomas, Kozai Izzard, Dual Carter, of course, even Smith Vilbert. Obviously, you'll see Max Granville. It'd be very interesting to see him kind of get a full set of reps, which, of course, we would assume he's getting. You never know. They could just, not play him. Nye White, obviously, transferred from Texas A&M, kind of seeing how he fits into the scheme. And then, obviously, the interior front, on Wayful, Xavier Gilliam, who has been the guy that's slotted in as that replacement starter for, I guess, Devontae Thomas, probably at that one technique.
Probably Alonzo, too.
Yeah, exactly, and Alonzo. But Alonzo's, for the most part, hasn't been – he's been hurt. So,
he's been hurt.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to kind of see who's replacing them on that. And then, of course, you have, with the loss of Tamir Robinson, who is going to be at that mic. I would imagine they have a lot of guys kind of rotating there, because I feel like Penn State is the program to where you have multiple guys that have the potential to play the mic position. Now, who actually is going to play it, who's going to start, we don't know. They might not even show that in the game, but
true.
I think it is kind of interesting to see who steps up in that mic role, whether not just the obvious starters, but just some of the young guys. Some might have the traits to kind of be okay, this is the next Mike. We can see this guy in the next 2-3 years. So I think, if anything, if you're looking out for an overall theme of the spring game, I think
it's where we're going to be sitting.
Well, yeah, that too. I park right over there. I'm so confused. I don't know, where are we?
Yeah, I have no idea.
We'll be
no
right
press box, guys.
in the stands. Laptops. It starts raining. It might be just crazy. So yeah, it's where are we going to sit, and just what young guys kind of surprise you, have traits, things like that. Because other than that, I just honestly, if you're watching the game, don't have big expectations.
You can't watch the game. You can't even watch the game.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. The game is not televised. So if you're watching the game,
there might be radio.
I mean, I'd be interested to watch Andy White and Kenny Wosley, because they're both Iomata charter grads, and it's obviously a very good Philly high school. And if they could carve out pretty good careers with Penn State, it's if Penn State can kind of build a recruiting pipeline similar to what they have with the McDonough School, that would be a really good thing for Penn State.
Yeah, they haven't been able to really recruit that well. Obviously, Jabri Wallace-Coleman, running back, who's not enrolled yet, freshman, is from there. But I like the Kenny Woosley take, because at practice, we've seen him at the nickel. Obviously, Zion Tracy and King Mack are both hurt, so I also think that kind of, for the safety with King Mack, I think that kind of elevates Dejon Lane more into the field role right now. But so I think those are two guys that are probably the favorites to, once they're healthy to play the nickel. But Kenny Woosley's been there right now, and Jim Knowles had good things to say about him last week, and he's kind of an interesting player. I remember his IQ as a recruit was kind of something that stood out, and also a very smart kid. I believe he's got some STEM distinctions back in high school. Fun fact. But actually, I think that'll be an interesting one to see, because I don't
find that.
I know. I don't want to talk about it, but that's an interesting one, because I don't really know how much we're going to see from the top corners like Elliot Washington, Davian Collins, AJ Harris. They've all kind of solidified themselves. Obviously, Davian Collins has been a spring riser, consecutive off seasons. But when we talked to Terry Smith, he was like, yeah, Elliott and AJ are going to start, but Octavian's going to be playing similar like snap counts. So I think they've kind of solidified themselves there. So I think Woosley's an interesting one to watch. I think you look at another quarterback, Darius Dixon, from Mater Dei, the 4-star. He seems pretty raw still from what we see in him practice, but obviously that recruiting pedigree. He was a Max Preps All-American. Obviously getting a commit from California, you're obviously curious to see what he can bring to the
Mater
table.
Dei out of all schools.
Yeah, Mater Dei. It's like
that's like honestly as best as it can get. But yeah, I think overall it's hard to kind of look at any guys that actually played last year, especially considering like the length of the season. I mean, guys are still not practicing now. Like a lot of them might be recovering from injury. I mean, it's very possible that they're just kind of sitting right now because it's like I just finished my season. Like if you want them at full strength for the 2025 season, I think it's better to sit them now than sacrifice them being limited in fall camp and through the season. I mean, you need all hands on deck. You bring back the whole squad. You're expecting the whole squad to have their 100% in the game. Well, that's all we have for today. For more coverage, head to psucollegian.com and follow us on socials. We'll see you next time.